Welcome to the place they swore you'd never reach. Welcome to the other side of the shadows, to the cold mountain top where breath is thin and the silence is loud. Welcome to the edge of impossible, where pain was the blueprint and discipline the architect. You're not here by chance. You didn't slip through a crack. You weren't gifted this place. Number. You took it. You carved it out of rock with hands that bled, a mind that shattered and rebuilt, and a spirit that refused to kneel. They watch you now like you're myth, like you're magic, like you're something born out of legend. They're in full shock mode, because to them, you did the unthinkable. You figured it out, but they don't understand the hours. They don't see the nights that bled into mornings. They don't hear the screams you swallowed when nobody was watching. They don't know what it costs to be here, because you paid in silence. You grew in darkness. You trained in the cold with no applause, no claps, no validation, no promises. You were your own witness, your own judge, your own engine. And now they can't stop staring, their mouths wide open, because you became something that they never expected. Not because you changed, but because you revealed what was always there. They thought you were ordinary, that you were made from the same soft material as them, that you'd crack like them, cry like them, fold like them. But you had something different in you, something that didn't come from the world, something that wasn't taught, wasn't handed down. You had war inside you, not the kind that destroys, but the kind that builds unbreakable. You had pain, but it became power. You had doubt, but it turned to clarity. You had fear, but you walked forward anyway. They don't get it. They don't get how you became what you are, and that's why they look at you now like you're a wizard. They thought this was luck, that it was timing, that you found a secret door and walked through it, but you didn't. You built the door. You didn't have a map, so you drew it. You didn't see light, so you became it. You didn't wait to be saved. You saved yourself. And the irony is, the very people who once laughed now sit silent. The ones who rolled their eyes now can't look away. The ones who underestimated you now whisper your name when you walk by. Not because they understand, but because they feel something different in the room when you enter. They feel the gravity shift. They feel presence. They feel power. They feel you. You walked through storms that would have drowned them. You stood still in winds that would have thrown them off the mountain. You held fire in your lungs and still breathed. They thought you would disappear, but you didn't. You didn't just survive, you ascended. And now the view is different. Now you look down and realize how few made it. Not because they couldn't, but because they wouldn't. They chose easy. They chose comfort. You chose transformation. They chose later. You chose now. They stayed asleep. You woke up. There's no magic here. No spells, no fairy tales, just truth. Raw, real, violent truth. And that truth is, no one is coming. No one's going to build your dream for you. No one's going to hand you the crown. No one's going to gift you greatness. You either become it, or you watch someone else do it. That's it. And when you realize that, you didn't flinch. You didn't run. You didn't blame. You just got to work. Day after day, in silence, in shadows. And that's what they never see. The parts of the journey that aren't sexy. The ugly parts. The painful parts. The lonely nights. The rejections. The failures. The inner war. The battles that take place in your own mind when no one's watching. But you kept showing up. And that's why they're shocked. Because they didn't think someone could build this level of self. They didn't think someone could crawl through hell and come out clean. They didn't think someone could rewrite the code in their brain and turn weakness into steel. But you did. You rewired. You reprogrammed. You didn't just fix yourself. You forged yourself. And now, you walk like you know something they don't. Because you do. You walk with the weight of 1,000 lessons. With scars that tell stories they'll never understand. with silence that says more than noise ever could. Now they follow your movements. They analyze your words. They try to imitate your steps, but they can't duplicate it because this was born in darkness. And darkness doesn't copy. It creates. It burns down the fake and reveals the real. And that's what you are now. Real. Too real for the plastic world they live in. Too sharp for their soft excuses. Too focused for their distractions. Too dangerous for their comfort. And it terrifies them. You are the mirror they don't want to look into, because you show them what's possible. And if you could do it, it means they could have too, but didn't. And that burns them. That haunts them. That breaks them. Because now, the only thing between them and greatness is them. Not luck, not timing, not money, not background, just choice. And that's what your story screams. You chose. You chose the pain over comfort, the grind over games, the evolution over excuses. You chose the truth, even when it hurt. And now, they can't ignore it. You didn't ask for their attention, but now you have it. You didn't chase validation, but now they validate your every move. You didn't scream for recognition, but now they whisper about you in rooms you haven't even entered, not because you begged, but because you became. So, let them be shocked. Let their mouths hang open. Let them whisper. Let them wonder. Because the truth is, the real magic isn't in what you did. It's in who you became. The version of you that walks now isn't just a person. It's a symbol. A reminder that it's possible. That it can be done. That there's another way. That you don't have to settle, shrink, or play small. That you don't have to follow. You can lead. That you don't have to survive. You can dominate. And it all started with one quiet decision. One night when you said, no more. No more fear. No more delay. No more average. That's when you lit the fire. And since then, it hasn't gone out. It's only grown. And now the flames touch everything you do. Every step you take leaves a mark. Every word you speak holds weight. Every action echoes. You're not loud, but you're undeniable. And that's what shocks them most, because they expected fire to look wild, chaotic, destructive. But yours is controlled. It's focused. It's the fire of someone who knows, who's seen, who's bled, and still chose to rise. They stare because they're trying to figure it out. How you did it, how you endured, how you never quit, how you kept believing when no one else did. And maybe they never will understand. But that's not your job. Your job is to continue, to rise higher, to sharpen, to push boundaries, to remain relentless. Because now you don't just carry your own dreams, you carry the proof. The proof that it's possible. The proof that greatness can be built, that pain can be fuel, that silence can be strength. That the ones who shock the world are the ones who stop waiting for permission and start acting like it's already theirs. So let the shock continue. Let them whisper. Let them wonder. Let them try to explain it. But deep down, you'll always know, this isn't magic. This isn't luck. This is you. This is earned. This is fought for. This is built. They're looking at you like you're a wizard, but the only spell you ever cast was refusing to quit. They call it magic now, but they didn't see the seasons when nothing bloomed. They weren't there in the drought, when all you had were doubts and dried up hope and fading faith. They weren't there when the voice in your head was the only voice speaking, and it told you to give up. They didn't feel the ache in your chest, when dreams felt like distant echoes, instead of coming reality. And yet, you stayed. You stayed in the dark long enough to become the light. And now they marvel like spectators at a miracle, blind to the storm that built you. Because they only noticed the fruit, never the root. They never traced the blade back to the forge. But now, the blade is sharp. And they feel it when you speak, when you walk, when you enter a room. They feel that edge, that presence, that precision. You don't move fast, but you move with certainty. You don't talk a lot, but when you speak, it lands. There's a silence that follows your sentences, a stillness in the air after your steps. That's not arrogance, that's authority, and they know it. What they call wizardry is just what happens when discipline meets time, when focus meets fire, when someone wakes up every day and chooses not to fold. You've gone so deep into your purpose that the world must adjust around you. You don't chase anything now, you attract. Not because you're lucky, because you're aligned, and alignment is magnetic. Focus is magnetic. Clarity is magnetic. That's why their mouths are open. They're watching you like a puzzle they can't solve. You don't even move the same anymore, because once you figure it out, everything changes. You figured out that waiting was the real enemy, that potential means nothing without action, that people will doubt you until they can't, that pain is either your cage or your fuel. And once you got that, truly got it, you became unstoppable. You stopped needing their permission. You stopped shrinking to make them comfortable. You stopped explaining your vision to those who never saw it. You started moving with conviction, and now every step you take echoes through their lives like a warning. This is what happens when you commit. They thought the world worked a certain way until you showed them otherwise. They thought you needed connections, money, background, privilege, perfect timing. You had none of it. But what you did have was will. And will is a weapon. And when wielded right, it slices through every lie they've ever told themselves about why they can't make it. You don't speak to prove, you speak to shake. You walk through walls that used to stop you, and when they ask, how did you do it? The truth is, it wasn't one moment, it wasn't one event, it was millions of silent, invisible choices. To get up when it hurt, to go again when it failed, to learn when it stung, to stay disciplined when nobody clapped. You figured out that motivation fades, but identity doesn't. And so you didn't just change habits, you changed who you are. You became the kind of person who doesn't stop. And now it's not about success, it's about standard. You don't rise for applause, you rise because this is what you do now. You show up because that's who you are now. There's no off-season, no breaks, no back to normal. This is normal. Greatness is your new resting state, and that's why they look at you like you're something else. Because you are. You're not what they remember. You've outgrown the box they built for you. You've shed the labels. You've broken the mold. You've stepped out of their idea of you and into your true form. And that form, that essence, is terrifying to those who chose comfort, because now your presence is proof that it was never impossible, that it was never too late, that it was always in reach if they really wanted it. But they didn't, so now they stare, mouths wide open, eyes confused, hearts racing, because they realize they're in the presence of someone who chose differently, someone who stopped waiting, someone who didn't pray for doors, but kicked them open. You didn't beg for entry, you built the building. They said you couldn't, they laughed, they doubted, but doubt is a drug they gave themselves. You were never high on it, you were focused. You were faithful to the vision, even when it made no sense. You saw it so clearly you walked like it was already yours. That's not arrogance. That's certainty born of fire. Now they call it genius. Now they call it luck. Now they call it magic. But all of it was just consistency when nobody was clapping. All of it was just belief when the world said stop. All of it was just action when your bones ached and your mind begged you to rest. You kept going. You kept becoming. And now they look at you like a wizard, but you remember the truth. There was no spell. No wand, only will. No cape, only climb. No wand, only warfare with your weaker self, won 1,000 times in silence. They will never see the miles, the internal tears, the nights of not knowing if you're doing it right, but doing it anyway. The rejections, the failures, the versions of you that died so this one could live. But you know, and that's all that matters. So keep going. They're watching now, but they didn't help build the foundation. Their eyes are wide, but their hands are clean. Yours are calloused, scarred, marked with every sacrifice it took to figure it out. Wear that with pride, because while they're still figuring out how you did it, you're already building what's next. You didn't come this far to stop. You didn't rise this high to explain yourself. You didn't endure that much to play small now. Let them talk. Let them guess. Let them keep staring like you're some supernatural force, because in a way, you are. You're the force they said didn't exist. You're the proof they swore wasn't real. You're the one who wasn't supposed to win, but did, not by accident, but by evolution. And evolution doesn't ask permission. The truth is, once you reach this point, there's no turning back. You've tasted what it feels like to become more than what they expected. You've stood at the edge of the cliff, looked down, and stepped off anyway, not to fall, but to fly. And now that you know the air up here, you'd never trade it for the ground again. The air is thin, sure. The nights are colder. The climb is lonelier. But up here, there's clarity, there's peace, there's power. Because no one handed this to you. No one opened a door. You kicked through a wall of impossibility and left cracks in every doubt that ever tried to cage you. Now, they don't just stare in awe, they whisper behind walls. Because you're not just successful, you're dangerous. Dangerous to their excuses. Dangerous to their comfort. Dangerous to the parts of them that want to stay asleep. But the alarm clock they didn't ask for. And when you walk in the room, everything changes. The atmosphere shifts. The energy tilts. They can feel it, even if they never admit it. The presence of someone who became the storm. They look at you like you're a wizard because what you did doesn't add up in their world. You weren't supposed to be this focused, this locked in, this evolved. You weren't supposed to escape the version of you they created in their head, but you did. You outgrew it. You broke every frame they tried to place around you, and now they're stuck in a loop, replaying every moment they overlooked you, underestimated you, disrespected you. That's why their mouths are wide open. Because now, they know they missed something massive. You, Bao, were a seed they threw in the dark, but you didn't die. You rooted, you grew, and now you cast shadows on the very ones who thought they buried you. You became everything they said was unreachable, not just to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. Because deep down, there was always a voice inside you whispering, "You're more than this." And the moment you started listening to that voice instead of theirs, everything began to shift. They don't get it because they never heard that voice clearly enough. Or maybe they did, but they drowned it out with comfort, with opinions, with fear. You listened, you obeyed, you put your head down, shut the world out, and let that voice guide you through darkness after darkness until it finally brought you to the light. And now, that voice is a roar. It's in everything you do, every step, every breath, every move you make echoes with that deep, unshakable knowing. You were built for this. You figured it out. Not just how to succeed, but how to see. You see life differently now. You don't chase trends, you set standards. You don't beg for seats at tables, you build new ones. You don't move for applause, you move for alignment. Because when you walk in purpose, the world has to take notice. That's why their eyes stay on you. That's why their mouths stay open. They feel it, the shift, the signal, that something rare just walked in. Not flashy, not loud, but undeniable. Now, you're not just a person to them, You're a symbol of what's possible, of what it looks like when someone refuses to live below their potential. And whether they love it or hate it, they can't unsee it. You are the uncomfortable reminder that comfort comes at the cost of greatness. You are the living result of war, not with others, but with the weaker version of yourself you buried along the way. And that's what shocks them most, not just your success, but your discipline, your resolve, your peace in chaos, your composure under pressure. They thought success would make you arrogant, but it made you still, calm, focused. You don't need to prove anything now. Your life speaks. Your work speaks. Your presence speaks. You carry silence like a weapon now, because people feel energy more than noise. You walk in purpose so sharp, so clear, it slices through every shallow thing around you, and it leaves them shook, confused, inspired, intimidated, sometimes all at once. They watch you now, like they're trying to solve a riddle, like they're studying you, like they're hoping to find your secret. But they never will, because it can't be copied, it can't be faked. You didn't download this, you earned it. Every scar, every doubt conquered, every tear you turned into fuel. You took the long road when the shortcuts looked easy. You went deep when the surface was safe. And now you're unreachable. Not because you're better, but because you went further. Further into discomfort, further into truth, further into yourself. And now they call it mystery. They call it genius. They call it magic. But you know what it is. It's clarity born from chaos. It's power born from pain. It's you, unmasked, unlocked, and unshakable. And the truth is, this is just the beginning. You're not done. You're not even close. This version of you is dangerous, but the next one will be legendary. Because now, you don't rise to prove. You rise because you can't not rise. It's who you are now. You're wired for it, built for it, called to it, and the world's just now starting to notice what you've known all along. That greatness is not a gift, it's a decision. So let them look, let them wonder, let them doubt and stare and analyze. Let their mouths hang open in confusion, in awe, in fear. Because the truth is this: they saw your silence as weakness, but it was focus. They saw your distance as arrogance, but it was discipline. They saw your transformation as sudden, but it was years in the making. And now that it's here, now that you've figured it out, it's not going anywhere. You're here, built, battle-tested, unfolded, awake. You are not the same. You are not explainable. You are not normal. You are the walking result of relentless belief, ruthless consistency, and uncompromising vision. They're in full shock mode, and it's only just begun. So now you stand here, not as who you were, but as who you chose to become. The silence behind you is loud because it's filled with everything you outgrew, and the noise ahead, that's the sound of the world realizing you're not a phase, you're a force. Let them stare, let them talk, let them tremble in the presence of someone who refused to be ordinary. You don't owe them an explanation. You don't need to slow down. Because this right here, this life, this level, this frequency isn't for everyone. It's for the few, for the focused, for the forged. You're not magic. You're evidence that it can be done, that it can be figured out. And now, they're in full shock mode, staring like you're a wizard, because in their world, you are. Mouths wide open, eyes wide shut, and all you did was become undeniable.